America was in shock. As we sifted through the rubble in the weeks that followed 9/11, the country was terrified that another attack could occur at any moment from any quarter. The Bush administration quickly began to push through sweeping policy changes.
Before anyone had a chance to understand what went wrong, he proposed fixes that went far beyond fighting terrorism. This is what happens when federal legislators respond in panic.
Congress had been evacuated because of the anthrax scare, and most of us were hanging around the lawn of the Capitol. We're really out of touch. Yet they felt some desire to rush this bill through.
Give us a weekend to read it, and let's take it up Monday morning. Hey, I'll come in and vote at 7 o'clock on Monday morning if it's that urgent.
In the Senate, they called it the United in Strengthening America Act. And in the House, they called it the Patriot Act, providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorist acts. And the compromise was to call it both, the USA Patriot Act. But the real purpose behind those names, of course, was to suggest that anyone who would criticize it is unpatriotic, is a traitor.
To those who scare peace-loving people with phantoms of lost liberty, my message is this: your tactics only aid terrorists.
When the Patriot Act was first sent to the Congress by the Bush administration, it came with a request that we hold no hearings on it so that there would be no public input or public discourse.
That might have even been somewhat acceptable had it been the bill that was considered by and adopted unanimously by the committee, but it wasn't.
For 6 weeks previously, Congress had debated how to address law enforcement needs in the wake of 9/11. And eventually a bill was crafted that had bipartisan support.
To have Bob Barr on the far right, Barney Frank, far left, agree was an amazing feat.
We came up with a draft of the bill that did have very, very broad support across the Judiciary Committee. Unfortunately, it was then changed in a last-minute draft before it came up on the floor.
Sometime very late in the evening after midnight, the John Ashcroft version, Bush White House version, was substituted.
The bill was printed at 3:45 a.m. the morning before the vote on the House floor. And you tell me how many of the 435 members of Congress had a chance between 3:45 a.m. and 11 a.m. to read a bill that was 345 pages long.
No member of Congress read this legislation before it was voted on, not a one.
This is still warm. It just came off the Xerox machine. This isn't the bill that was adopted by a unanimous 36 vote majority of Democrats and Republicans of the Judiciary Committee. These are critical issues. This is what we're fighting for. These are our civil liberties.
The new bill contained provisions that had been rejected by Congress before 9/11 had even occurred.
Where they need to be strengthened and give them more effect.
When I looked at the draft, I said, I've seen this before. Almost all of the provisions represented efforts to expand federal law enforcement power.
They used the cover of fighting terrorism to really greatly expand federal law enforcement powers.
The Patriot Act ultimately passed both the House and the Senate with overwhelming support.
This legislation is essential not only to pursuing and punishing terrorists, but also preventing more atrocities in the hands of the evil ones.
President Bush quickly signed the Patriot Act into law. It was only the beginning.
Some of the worst violations of civil liberties have happened without the input or without the authorization of Congress or the American public. In fact, it's often happened with the discussion and with the approval of a small number of men within the executive branch.
These few men have changed the character of America. But have they made us any safer?